Let's look at Saturday. There are 6 games on. We're streaming in. We're trying to win a fantasy basketball matchup. Michael Bolton, let us win.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and did you know that Miss Casey used to be on Neighbours? I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Blue Sky, joshloyd.bsky.social, on Twitter at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers to FanDuel can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Also, head across to lockedondaily.com and sign up for our newsletter, the best newsletter in the business, BITB. It's free, it's in your inbox 5 days a week. We're also here for you to double bang, listen to the audio, watch the video as we get ready for the final 6 weeks of the NBA season. Heading into fantasy playoffs in many leagues, including the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl playoffs starting next week. Oh yeah, better make sure I'm ready to set up the playoffs in that league. Or in those leagues, those 10 leagues. Yeah, gotta get ready for those. All right, not 10 leagues, sorry, my bad. There's way more than 10. What am I even talking about? Isn't there there's 70 leagues? Something like that. Anyway, there's a lot of leagues. We're gonna do it. Anyway, we are here now to talk about Saturday. We've got National Pig Day, Saturday, March the 1st. Let's talk about it. There are 6 games on. There is an early start, a 6 p.m. Eastern start. Just going to double check that one. It's a 6 p.m. Eastern. It's the game of the day, the Wizards and the Hornets on Saturday starting at 6 p.m. So just be aware of that. Let's talk about the schedule stuff to start things off, and then we're going to get it, because we are on Saturday and Sunday here the last 2 days of the week. We're going to do more for category leagues, more specific individual category streaming versus grouped streaming. So let's take a look at how the schedule looks, and there is only one team playing a back-to-back Saturday to Sunday, and that is the San Antonio Spurs. Part of the reason why, when we set up the streaming plan at the start of the week, the idea of using 2 slots was probably not the ideal way to go, because the only real way you could do it limited your options. You could do a 3 and 4 with one team with the Hornets at the start of the week, and you could only get a back-to-back at the end with the Spurs. So your options to stream, and we're still going to do it in part of that stream plan. We'll talk about it later. But the options there are limited. So only one team only one team playing the back-to-back over the weekend, and that is the San Antonio Spurs. If we look at some chunky stuff, Saturday through to Wednesday, all of these days are 9 games or fewer, so I think it's relatively easy for you to be able to stream guys in on these days. A couple of these names, and I'll talk about this in a second, but a couple of these names are a little iffy in the chunky section here. They've all got 3 games in 5 nights. Quentin Grimes, the last couple of games have been really bad. The ones before were really good. I don't really know what to expect from him. I do think that he starts, but is he a 20-minute guy now? It doesn't seem like that'd be what they would do, but I don't know. That is what has been happened. Well, that happened last game, so is it his knee? Is it a Nick Nurse coaching change? I don't know. So I've got Grimes there. I do have Keyshawn George there, even though there's going to be back and forwards with the Wizards and Middletons and Smarts and how they use these guys. I've got Keon Ellis there, who I think is pretty solid at the moment. Same with Chris Dunn. They're just going to do their thing and accumulate numbers. Najee Marshall also started the last game. Will that be an ongoing thing, or will they go back to Kessler Edwards if PJ Washington plays? I'm not sure. And then the bottom one there is Kyle Filipowski, and it's incredibly risky. I've got no idea what the Jazz are going to do. Does he play 17 minutes across 3 games? Does he get a 33-minute game in there somewhere? That is possible as well. And you're going to find that when we're trying to plan out stuff in advance of how the value of teams go. Utah is going to be a really bad one. Charlotte's going to be a pretty bad one as well. It's going to be almost impossible to tell, because the Jazz, over this time frame, they play the Pelicans on Sunday, the Pistons on Monday, then the Wizards on Wednesday. So are the Jazz, and who have already, I believe, ruled out Markkanen for the game against the Wolves on Friday, does John Collins play? Is he... Yeah, he's still questionable. Clarkson's questionable. Sexton's questionable for Friday's game. But do they play against the Pelicans or the Wizards? I don't think so. So what does Kessler play in those games? I don't know. So I just don't know what to do with Filipowski there. But 3 games in 5 nights at least gives you an insulating buffer that if he does play limited minutes, you're going to at least get the bulk games come through there. I'll talk about this, which I couldn't find a really good way to name it, a bit incoming back-to-back. So that's teams that are playing Friday into Saturday, where you've got to watch for rests on Saturday. It's the Nets and Cam Thomas there, the Grizzlies and the Pistons. I don't think there's going to be too much to worry about rest-wise with the Pistons and the Grizzlies, although again, the Pistons have played a big chunk of games, so just watch for Cade Cunningham. I don't think there's a problem there, but just in case, he often's the wrong word. Occasionally, they'll do the thing where it's 5 minutes to the game starting. By the way, Cade's felt something sore in warm-ups. He's out. I don't want to be prescient on that, but just watch it. Let's look at some key injury statuses. And the first key injury status I'm putting up for Saturday is Hornets versus Wizards. Why am I doing it that way? Well, because it's Hornets versus Wizards. And the Hornets are on 14 wins, same as the Jazz. The Pelicans are on 16 and the Wizards are on 10. I believe that the Hornets might move into Jazz territory here and start sitting guys when they're against bad teams. And there is no team that is badder than the Wizards. I know you guys are all seeking out the baddest things you can, but in this one, this might be bad. Does that mean LaMelo sits? Mark Williams? They're probably the only two real risks because Bridges is honestly he puts up numbers, but he's bad enough that it doesn't really matter. Williams is probably close to that anyway. But with LaMelo sitting the last game, does he sit again here because it's against the Wizards? And a lot of my projections and ideas for this Saturday slate is based on the idea that I don't think that Mark Williams plays and I don't think LaMelo plays. It would seem, if I'm trying to interpret the Hornets and their direction right at the moment, it would seem unlikely to me that those guys participate in this game. For the Wizards, Alex Sarr came back, played one game, hurt his ankle again, and hasn't been seen since. Him being out just means that Richaun Holmes jumps to the top of a lot of these lists. I put Cam Thomas on this list. There's almost no chance that he plays on Saturday. He's going to play Friday, but I'll put him there just in case. Desmond Bane is questionable for Friday, so I guess there's a chance he sits on Saturday. And then for the Spurs, Jeremy Sohan and Charlie Bassey. Sohan copped the hit to the head last game. We haven't really got an update on that while Bassey's dealing with this knee issue. I would be very, very surprised if Bassey plays in both of these games of the weekend. In fact, that's just not going to happen. I don't know if he'll play Saturday, sit Sunday. If he sits both, I don't know. But I'm going to be very shocked at that. And then a couple of other ones. PJ Washington missed the last game for the Mavericks. Jason Kidd gave a confusing statement as to how serious it was, so we just don't know. And then Gershon Yabusele with the poke in the eye. His quote was basically, felt like his finger was touching my brain. That doesn't feel very good. I'm sure it doesn't feel very good at all. So I don't know whether he'll be available, but obviously if he is out, it's a 1-for-1 switch where Andre Drummond becomes that option for you. We're going to come back and talk individual streams for points in category leagues. First of all, though, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. When the game tips off, the NBA action, it is just getting started. There is no better place to get in on that action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You can place live bets all through the game. So even if you miss the opening tip or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay involved with those live bets. You can even combine the live bets into a same-game parlay, and that will increase your odds over on FanDuel. And if you are that new customer at FanDuel, well, you can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just go to FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. Okay, so let's take a look at some streaming options. Let's go to Yahoo and ESPN Points League streaming. And again, I will continue to reference this because I never know how far people scrub through videos and come back to this. But when I'm talking about these names here, there are a lot of assumptions that I'm placing onto it, mainly around the Charlotte Hornets. And my belief that they will sit a couple of guys because they're playing the Wizards. You can come back and call me useless or fraud or Nostradamus, depending on what happens. But that's how I am leaning at the moment. So I'll go at the top of this list a little bit safer with someone like Najee Marshall, whose role is safe and it can bump if PJ Washington is out. Now, he shot absolutely horrifically last game, but the other stuff was all right. So I like Najee as an option there. Quentin Grimes, again, brutally bad in the last game, but 2 games ago, three games ago, he was very good. So we put him there. Keyshawn George, we feel very confident that he's just going to keep starting. Is his production going to be great? Again, we're dealing with the guys that aren't particularly strong and they're sitting on the waiver wire, so we take chances with it. And then with the next one is going to be the C part of Moses Brown. Now, on my projections, he is the top-ranked guy here. And that's with me giving him 25 minutes. But last game that PJ Washington played, Moses Brown played 0 minutes. The game that we saw last time against Charlotte was not because Moses had just come in and they started him. He was sitting on the roster and Jason Kidd kept looking over and go, absolutely not. You are not playing. You are terrible, my guy. And then we had PJ out, and then we had against the Hornets, and Brown was great. Remembering this is the final game that Moses Brown can play. He cannot play another game for the Mavericks unless they re-sign him after April the 10th. Not March the 10th, April the 10th. So I don't know. And it's against the Bucks. Could he get into a million fouls against Brook and Yanni? Probably. Could he get played off the court? Probably. So I went with like 25-minute projection. It put him like right really high up because, again, he's a very good per-minute fantasy producer. He's just a terrible real-life player. So he's in the middle there. The next two are Hornets guys, Moussa Diabate and KJ Simpson. I don't know whether Mark Williams is going to play. I would not be surprised if he does not. So Diabate and Nurkic would likely split the center minutes. And the same with LaMelo Ball. KJ Simpson should get 30 minutes. They've moved off of Alfred Payton and into KJ, who they're preserving his two-way days. And I do think that KJ Simpson will get another opportunity to start. Again, I'm probably at 60% likely that LaMelo does not play in this game because it's against the Wizards. So just when I'm talking about Diabate, when I'm talking about Simpson, it's likely, or not likely, it is because I believe the Hornets are going to sit players down. The ESPN Points League streaming options, it's a similar list. We've got Najee, Quentin Grimes, but I'm going to throw Nick Smith Jr. in there ahead of Keyshawn George. The ESPN format rewards threes a little bit more, and Smith gets a lot of those up. He can be quite inefficient. We're well aware of that, but he generates some assists, he generates some steals at times, and his role is relatively secure. And if my calculations are correct and Ball doesn't play, there are more shot opportunities and more ball handling opportunities around for Smitty in this spot. The other names there, again, the same sort of caveats. Moses Brown, Moussa Diabate, and Kenneth James Simpson. I'm sure it's not Kenneth James. Let me double check before I misappropriate a name onto him. Of course, I should. It's just Kenneth Simpson Jr. Of course it is. Why every J basically, apart from I don't think is JJ Redick a junior. I don't think he is. Basically, any J is a junior in the NBA. So KJ Simpson, Kenneth Simpson Jr. is the one we look at there. Now let's go to category leagues, and like I had been doing, I've been grouping them together in your points and threes together, and rebounds and blocks. But we're going to separate them out. So let's look at 6 individual category streamers for points in the points category, not for points leagues, for the points category for a category league. Again, remembering the caveats. I've got Moses Brown. In this one, I didn't manipulate the order. I just said, screw it, let's just do it, right? Moses Brown at the top. Will he score 15 points? Maybe. I don't know. He could. But honestly, I don't know how to view that one. Nick Smith's there. Dylan Brooksy Brooks and the Rockets did announce that with Fred VanVleet returning, and he is returning, that they are going to continue to start Amen Thompson over Jabari Smith / Tari Eason. So you're going to have, which we'll see how it goes, Fred, Jalen, Brooks, Amen, which is like realistically 4 guards. I know Amen can play the 4, but that's what they're going to do. And then we'll see where Smith and Eason fight for minutes. I'm a little worried about what this means for Tari and his playing time moving forward, to be honest, but that's what they're doing. So Dylan Brooks is always going to be an interesting stream guy. Same with Moses Moody, no John Kuminga back. Moody is like solid enough with some points and threes, but absolutely not spectacular. I've got Najee Marshall there, and then we go down to Kenneth James Simpson, not James. Why does Kenneth James just roll off the tongue so well? Kenneth Simpson Jr., KJ. I'm just going to say KJ so I stop making that mistake. KJ Simpson, who might get you 13, 14 points. Remember, double-digit scoring is below average for fantasy points for fantasy category league in the points category. You need to get 18 to be average. So always remember that. Don't get fooled by a double digit. The sexy body of a double digit figure. Don't get allured by it. Is lured a word? Lured is. Allured isn't. English. I have spoken it before. Let's talk about threes. Let's go to Nick Smith. Smith Jr. NJ Smith. He'll hit some threes. He might go 2 of 9, but he'll hit some of them. I would hope. So I like him there. Dylan Brooks. Moses Moody. Yep. Names we've talked about already. Now let's get into some more guys who are more specific for threes. Keyshawn George. Yeah. Again, has had some horrific shooting runs this season. But opportunity, variance, we lean into it and just hope we get a good night. And the same goes with Big Boom AJ Green. Last game for AJ was a definite doom. He'd boomed up the last couple of games before that and played a lot of minutes. But Glenn Rivers decided to go a different direction in the last one. We got a big Gary Trent game. Getting 2 big Gary Trent games in a row is one of those things like unicorn pubes. You're just never going to see it. So I think AJ is going to be a little bit like more useful. But who knows? Who knows what happens with Gary Trent or with Glenn Rivers or with what they do with that rotation. The other one there is, of course, Corey Kispert. And if you don't rely on Corey Kispert for threes, then what are you ever doing considering Corey Kispert for anything? That is all he does. He doesn't do anything else. And his role is somewhat secure as a 25-ish minute a night bench player. Let's now, again, what I would usually have done in these individual category stream ones is I do it based on the way that I read the box score, which is always, for fantasy, I always read points, threes, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks. Whenever I produce a slash line, I always put it in that order. But I wanted to do it now where I've got points and threes together, and now we move into the guard stats, which I think points and threes sort of lean into, and then we'll do the big man stats towards the end, individually, of course. If we're looking at assists here, again, Kenneth Simpson Jr., working with my assumption that LaMelo is out. But if he's not out, then it's not useful, is it? But I've got him there. Killian Hayes, expecting D'Angelo Russell and Cam Thomas to both not be there. And Hayes will continue to start, and his 10-day contract is still running, I believe, through to Monday maybe. But anyway, he'll be available here. Nick Smith, whose value does dip if Ball plays, but he can still get some assists. This man is available in a lot of spots, rightfully so, because finally people have caught on and started dropping him. But Dennis Schroeder, yeah, he can get 4 or 5 assists. I think he even had a 7-assist game the other day coming off the bench for the Pistons. But when you're looking for those individual assists in a game, it's not easy to get. And Schroeder does become at least streamable here. Same with Carlton Carrington in Washington. Do I like the way they handle him with him coming off the bench behind Chris Middleton? Sometimes playing 30, sometimes playing 23 minutes? No. Does it make any sense to constantly jerk his role around? No. But also, is he good? No. So I get it from that perspective. Still, there's a chance that Bub gets you 3. There's a chance he gets you 5. There's a chance he gets you 7. We want to hit that upside on assists because the next guy that is likely available who could get assists is Damian Barr. And he could literally play 0 minutes. That's possible. Again, this is based on my projection that LaMelo does not play. And that Barr will come in and plays 24, 25 minutes, maybe 30, maybe get 6 assists. I don't know. But it could go completely haywire. It could be bad. So we just got to be... I would want to wait to get a little bit more info. But if you need to take advanced shots at things, it would make sense to me using some level of Columbo-ness that the Hornets might just sit some guys against the Wizards. Maybe. I guess we're going to find out, aren't we? We are going to find out at some point. We'll come back. Let's look at some steals. Not quite finishing off the guard numbers, but for steals, we'll go to Keon Ellis and Keon Johnson right at the top. Ellis played big minutes last game, even off the bench. I'm not sure whether they can continue that, but it'll be interesting. There was a little blowout factor in there, and they kept Keon until the end. Plus, they took Trey Lyles out of the rotation. Trey Lyles out of the rotation, easy. They can do that. But that extra 2-3 minutes he got at the end of the game when it was a blowout, we'll see whether that's something they do or not. So I think 28 is probably a fairish look at for Keon Ellis. Keon Johnson, again, we'll see if Cam Thomas impacts him, but I don't think Thomas plays on Saturday, so Johnson should be fine there. Then we go to the 2 Charlotte guys, Damian Barr and KJ Simpson, and then we go to Keyshawn George, names we've mentioned a lot of times already. And the other one there is Zaire Williams, who has been starting and should continue to start and been a pretty decent source of defensive stats as well as some rebounds and some threes and playing enough minutes to be considered at this stage. The last guard category we take a look at, we go to guards, yeah, you know what I mean, small category. Free throw percentage, a lot of the same names here. Nick Smith Jr., Corey Kispert. Then we get into one of the best shooters literally of all time, Luke Kennard, Najee Marshall, Seth Curry, assuming he plays. He also could not, that's a risky one. And Dennis Schroeder. So again, I think we are seeing this relatively well illustrated, that it is possible to find pretty good free throw shooters off the wire. Yes, the volume is not going to be supreme, but there's enough. There's enough there to get some decent free throw guys off the wire. That will then bring us to talk about rebounds and big men category in general. And of course, we will start with the C-parter himself, Moses Brown. Will he get another double-double? Will he play 0 minutes? Will he play 10 minutes? I don't know. I feel like if he at least gets on the court, you'll get 4 or 5 rebounds. That's what he does. So I like that option. Then we go to the Moussa Diabate spot. Does Diabate play 0 as the third stringer behind Nurkic and Mark Williams? Does he start with Taj Gibson as his backup because Nurkic is sick and Mark Williams is out? I don't know, but I'll put him there. Kevon Looney. Andre Drummond. Looney's just no upside, but get something there. Andre Drummond is someone who, even in a backup role, Embiid is out. Even in a backup role, you can get 5 or 6, but if he starts, you can get double digits, and I like that. As for Looney, by the way, Quinton Post started the last second half for the Warriors. I don't know whether they go back to that alignment. Post would be a threes-ish sort of streamer if you're looking for big man numbers, but do you trust Steve Kerr in the foreseeable future? I don't know. Zaire Williams is a solid rebounder. He can get double digits. The minutes are strong. He's solid enough in that category. And the other one there is Isaiah Stewart, a guy that's available everywhere. His upside is low, much like Kevon Looney, but 6'6" and a block, 60% shooting. That helps for certain people in certain leagues. If we look at blocks, well, Stewart is on this list as well. The other name I've got at the top there is Bismack Biyombo. Now, he hasn't been rebounding very well, and there is a risk that he plays like 14 minutes. He could play 30, he could play 25, but I haven't got him projected with super, super high minutes. But if Jeremy Sohan does get ruled out, I will put Biyombo's minutes higher. The Spurs are just incredibly difficult to figure out. They're playing terribly. Their rotations are all over the place. Sometimes the starters just play 20 minutes and they play 10 minutes and the bench fires off. It's all over the shop. So Biyombo is worthwhile, and we'll talk about more of that with the streaming plan in a second, but he's interesting enough. It's just not super reliable. I've got Moses Brown there. I've got Keyshawn George as probably a one or two block guy, maybe. He had a 3-block game the other day, but that's not reliable. Moussa Diabate, more steals than blocks, but he can help out there. And the other one is Day'Ron Sharpe, who I just don't know how much they're going to... he's been playing like 18 minutes, and I still like it, and I still think he's worth holding in a lot of spots, but obviously it'd be way better for him if Claxton wasn't there, and we'll get an interesting look into how they view that in that game on Friday. And then the last category we look at for the big men is the field goal percentage. Moussa Diabate, Moses Brown, Brandon Clark. If you're looking for a guard with some steal ability, Gary Payton, the glove, the doctor. He's a very high field goal percentage player. He's not a high volume guy, much like none of these guys. And it's part of why when I talk about field goals and free throw percentage off the wire, well, you can find field goal percentage players, but the difference in the volume of those guys versus the volume of guys on rosters is so large. And usually the high volume field goal attempt players sitting on the wire are the bad shooters. Whereas for free throws, the percentage of the attempts of those guys on the wire is much higher versus what your team total is versus, you're adding Brandon Clark to a team that's taken, let's say, 300 field goal attempts for the week versus a team that's taken 130 free throws for the week. It's easier to influence free throws than field goals. Anyway, so Gary Payton's there. Rashawn Holmes, who would jump to the top of a lot of these lists if Alex Sarr is out, but at the moment he's not. And then Isaiah Stewart is also on that list. The last thing we look at is the streaming plan. So you know that I've been trying to plan out this idea of how we value and which guys we could drop and how we utilize our slots, and I'll balance that up with a fantasy points comparison at the end of the week, plus category contributions and category comparisons through the week as well. This is the streaming move that we've got to make for if we use the 2-slot streaming method. We went with the Hornets guys, 3 games in 4 nights, Monday through Thursday. We skipped a 10-game Friday because for a lot, that is not a streamable day. Again, I'll be making an adjustment to that next week. And then for that slot situation, you then had to get a Spurs guy for Saturday, Sunday. Now, unfortunately, the guy that you would have liked to have grabbed there is Keldon Johnson. And I've got to keep myself to certain rules. It's all very well, like I say, I'll just add Keldon Johnson here. But I've got to hit certain rules to, again, try to make this somewhat fair in terms of a comparison. And my set was he's got to be either under 30% on Yahoo or under 45% on Basketball Monsters Advanced Numbers. And Keldon today ticked over 31%. So, or he ticked over 30 up to 31%, so I can't include him there. So what I am going to include is the 2 options who are available and hit those criteria. Number 1 is the pencil Harrison Barnes. Barnesy! So Barnes got the weekend back-to-back. Will Barnes be good? No. Should you get at least 40 minutes out of him? I would say so. Of Could you get 60? Possible. The other one is Bismack Biyombo, and that's very risky. I might get 25 minutes combined. I literally might get 60 minutes. But the other option, the third option, would be Julian Champagnie. Now, I'm only tracking 2 options, and my 2 options are going to be Barnes and Biyombo. And the way that, again, this is rather arbitrary, but they've got to have a way that I'm setting it out. The Harrison Barnes ad, I will add to the team that I had Nick Smith on. So I tried Smith for the 3 games in 4 nights, and I'll drop him hypothetically in this spot and add Barnes. And then I'll add Bismack Biyombo to the team that had Josh Green, and we'll see how these play out. And then the last streaming option we'll do will be for the 1 slot stream, which would just be a single Sunday stream, which would be on the Sunday preview show. And then we'll see how all of that stuff plays out. And that is how the end of this show plays out. Shout out to all the pigs out there. Porcine legends themselves. Shout out to whatever you need to shout out with pigs. Hit the thumb on the video and subscribe and ring your bell, and let's hope you get a nice result in fantasy, but in anything else that you're doing as well. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.